Most leaders are qualified through talent, but the highest quality of leader is qualified through character, and character only comes through hardship. Hi, I'm Cartwright Morris, and this is the Men Are Forged podcast. For the last 8 years, I've been researching, following, and discovering the highest qualities that lead to leadership health. And I found the best leaders, the ones who are willing to fall forward and redefine success on a daily basis. And what you find in this podcast is stories of men who have been willing to face the hard things and become better leaders. If you want to find out more outside of this podcast about how I help do that, then go to menarforged.com/leaders. All right. Welcome into the Men Are Forged podcast. I'm excited to have Jake Thomas coming from Miami, Florida. Jake, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Cartwright. It's a pleasure.
I'm excited to interview you because it sounds like you just got as you even say on your bio, a plethora of experiences. Obviously the desire to help people's there. And I'm looking forward to kind of diving in of what led to that. But, first off, I know you come from the Marine Corps and you've got these degrees in different areas. And so I'm wishing which one came first. I would love to hear just kind of like a little bit, your story. What got you in the Marines?
Good question. The Marines did come first before all the degrees and everything, as far as in academia. Left New Orleans, where I grew up, when I was pretty much 17 to try to go off into undergrad. Didn't do too well at the time. And then I went right into the Marine Corps at 18 and started off rocking and rolling. To me, where I was in life, in my head and in my heart, then as a teenager wasn't the best place. And I didn't see a lot of future. And given that current situation, the Marine Corps looked like a more profitable place for me, of all places. So it looked more comforting than where I currently, or when I was at the time. And so there I went.
Man, that's great. What's something that you took from the Marine Corps that you're still carrying with you today?
Besides scars? God, everything about it, the brotherhood, the fraternity, the warrior ethos, the core values of honor, courage, commitment, the pride of being a Marine, always, having that with friends still to this day around the world, a business partner of mine, something that's truly, to use one of your words, forged, into you through blood, sweat, tears, adversity, and overcoming circumstances that are unimaginable to most people. And you just get to really find out a lot about yourself, but at the same time, understanding that it's what you're giving is for something greater than yourself. So I carried that a lot forever, the discipline and everything else, and, the camaraderie and all the good stuff.
Man, that's great. Yeah. I would say every Marine I know or met in my life, there's just a different mentality to life for sure that y'all carry. From the Marines, your story, you came from addiction. I'm curious, what, leaving the Marines, was that kind of the start of the journey that you're on now? Was there something that came before that?
Leaving, getting back to the world and, just feeling out of place. I was still young. I got out when I was 22, about to turn 23. And I had come from a place where I had so much responsibility as a teenager, even, in charge of millions, billions of dollars of equipment at times, right? Having the power of God in a phone, or in a satellite phone or in your hands with a weapon. And then coming back to the world and, at times when I was younger and underage, being told you can't drink, you can't have a beer and couldn't do certain things, but yet you can go and literally be God and have a lot of this responsibility otherwise. And then coming back to the world and not having that. And then being told that, hey, you need degrees and diplomas in order to be accepted around here or to get paid or to whatnot. And it's not that people don't care that you're a veteran. They don't have to care, one. But there was this displeasure that I had about was this not good enough? Does this not count for something? And I felt like the world owed me, which was the wrong feeling to have. So I was mad about it. And I took it out on myself and the people around me with how I acted and how I lived.
Hmm. So what led you? So that, I mean, I'm guessing that led into the lifestyle of addiction. What kind of got you out of it?
Yeah, so it definitely led me there because
Hmm.
sobriety was tough. Just coping with that was tough because you feel everything when you're sober. So anybody
Hmm.
that's on that path understands when you can cope with booze and with drugs, women, money, things, whatever, consumerism, materialism, it
Hmm.
numbs the pain of sobriety.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I first got out of the Marine Corps, I started working at a bar, which was great because I found friends. I found a similar kind of, camaraderie amongst guys, the
Hmm.
cohesiveness of a unit. And obviously we acted like animals, which was fun too. But
Hmm.
I had a supply, a very steady supply, free flowing, I guess would be the better way to say it. And so that kept me even keel because I didn't feel so much, by staying inebriated all the time. But it
Hmm.
wasn't healing me. And so it took going through a lot of that for years. It was five years I did that, drinking 8 nights a week,
Hmm.
and even continued for another 10 years after that, and mixed in the pills, mixed in the blow and the other drugs and the women and, material things and whatnot. But all it was about a not or a lack of wholesomeness that I had inside because I had this inferiority complex about what I didn't have or what I feel like I didn't have. The Marine Corps gave me an identity that I never had. And I was so held on to that identity that when it was gone, I was like, I don't know what to do now,
Yeah.
and so I've been searching for it ever since.
Man. And yeah, so was there a humbling moment? Was there a moment of a turning point that you kind of set you off on your path you are now?
A few of them.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
wish, I wish there was one, but there was definitely a few.
Hmm.
A lot of broken hearts from
Hmm.
friends, girlfriends. That's writing on the wall. When you realize that it's not the world around you that's fucked up. It's you.
Yeah.
The world is not as you perceive it. The world is as you are.
Hmm.
And to think like everybody's out to get you, or like, why can't I figure this out? Or why won't she love me? Or why don't they accept me? It's like, dude, it's impossible. I mean, I don't want to say it's impossible. 99%, right?
Yeah.
It can't be consistently over and over and over. I can't get a
Hmm.
relationship. I can't hold a job. I can't maintain friendships. I can't be good with my parents. Like, it's you, dog,
Hmm.
And it took a lot of banging the head against the wall, proverbially, and a little bit
Yeah.
literally, to realize that. And then there was an instance where my brother was in law school and he was coming back one day and we were having a phone call about something he had learned, a statute or a code in
Hmm.
Louisiana. He practices there. That's where we grew up. And he was talking about possession of a firearm with a controlled dangerous substance, or a CDS, with the cool way to say it.
Hmm.
Louisiana has a mandatory sentence of 10 years if you are caught with a firearm and a CDS together. Mandatory minimum 10 years, meaning
Wow.
it might be worse, but guaranteed you have those two things together, 10 years. I can for sure tell you for 5, 6, 7, I don't know, 8, almost 10 years, I always had a firearm on me because I always had a gun on me in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans. And for a lot of that time, I had bags on me too. CDS for sure, cocaine
Wow.
or MDMA or something else, but for sure a controlled dangerous substance. And when he
Hmm.
told me that, when he came back from school that day, I was just like, oh man,
Mm.
that's a lot of bullets I dodged.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
just one of those instances, and there were a few more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that wasn't enough for me to quit hearing that.
Wow. Oh man. But I guess it was sobering to a point.
Sobering's
So
a good word.
yeah. Yeah. But eventually that led to, I mean, like you use that language, that hole inside of you. What were some of the things you started doing to actually go, I got to find this in a healthy way? Today's episode is brought to you by Thrive Marriage Lab. If you want your marriage to thrive, this is a great opportunity to you. Because strong marriages are the bedrock of strong churches, organization, families, and community. This is a 12-month pathway for any of you that are looking to really have weekly engagement with experienced marriage counselors. Not just one, but many. So go to restory.life/thrive to get on the waiting list for this great program that starts in April. That's restory.life/thrive. And make sure you put the word Forge in the promo code to receive a discount on your monthly fee. Now, back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, once you get clean, the first time, you have to find something, right? Because if you don't keep occupied or keep moving forward, just kind of like taking a page from the Marine Corps, like you can't look down on the battlefield. You certainly can't look back. You look down, you look back, you get hit, you die, you go down as well. Like things are going to happen. It's a war. There's casualties. People are going to go down, etc. But you got to stay down range. Your weapon has to stay down range. You have to stay in the fight. You always have to keep moving, taking the fight to the enemy, right? That's like the mission of the Marine Corps, to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy by fire and maneuver. You got to bring the fight. And so to me, even in the back of my mind, amidst all that, like, knowing that I'm up against a wall here and not feeling the best, I still had that, like, you got to get up, dog. You got to get back out there. You got to re-engage. Find something, do something. So like the smallest little bits of positive self-talk, step by step, thing by thing. So it's like, all right, start getting up earlier. Okay, fine. Yeah. Make that up.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable thing. Set a time. You're going to get up at this time. Doesn't matter what's going on. That's fine. When I started going back to school, here comes the academics part. I made a promise to myself. I said, I'm not going to miss one class.
Wow.
All right. So like I had a thorough resume of how not to do it, of 5 years at LSU with 130 credit hours and not getting a diploma. Because I didn't go to
Baton Rouge will do it to you, man.
Brother. Trust me. I'm glad you know. But yeah, I had like 130 credit hours, but no diploma to show for it because I didn't go to class. I didn't do anything. I had, incompletes galore. And so when I moved to New York, it was kind of like my last ditch effort of like sink or swim. And I said, okay, we're going to have the wake up time. You are not going to miss class no matter what. No matter what. And then, exercise my mind and my body every single day. And those little things just alone right there were the start.
Yeah. So you talked about having an affinity for the physical and spiritual nutrition. Was there a mentor? Was there a resource, a book that you really started consuming? What really got you into really like, hey, I have to train myself, educate myself in these things than what I already know?
Growing up, I played sports, played all the ball sports, a lot of mostly soccer, and ran track in college. I loved being an athlete, and in the Marine Corps, that athleticism and physicality, performance is encouraged at times, demanded, where, hey, our lives might depend on my ability to jump over that wall or pull this guy over here, or just being able to call on your body. And by being able to call on your body, you understand that it's a coupling with your mind. So to me, as I started to get clean and the fog started to clear from my mind, I started to see that, like, with these habits that I was putting together of like, okay, we're going to get up at this time. We're not going to miss class. You're going to work out every single day. And now by work out every single day, I don't mean like destroy myself in the gym, but like you're going to do some type of physical exercise, because know your idle mind and your idle hands are going to get you in a world of hate. And so I didn't have a book. I didn't have a person. I didn't have a mentor. I drew from that experience as a Marine of where it was life or death, and to me now it was life or death again. And so I used it as a parallel to say, like, okay, put yourself back there, put yourself back in the fight. That way now it's life. So even though it's a metaphor for you, it's still going to have that same level of intensity to me, where it is do or die. It is life or death. And that's how I had to think of it.
Yeah. That choosing that, it beats the alternative. Like the alternative is like you said, staying a junkie and eventually dying.
I knew I was going nowhere on that path.
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't going the right way. And I knew, with this being my last ditch effort, because I was out of money, I was out of resources, I was getting older, that I had to do something different. And I don't remember, I was watching a speech. I can't remember who. It was an athlete receiving an award. Maybe it was Kevin Durant for his MVP award, but, talking to his mother and saying like, Mom, we did it. This is so cool. And he's crying. And I went on like a rabbit hole of watching people's various athletes receive awards, whether it's Hall of Fame speeches or this and that. Not one of them ever thanked a cigarette company, a liquor company, their drug dealer. None of them.
Yep.
I've never seen that. Maybe there's one way down somewhere, but I've never seen it. All of them, without failure. First person they thank is either God, higher power, or something else like that. Something bigger than themselves. So some type of a belief, of faith, right?
Yeah.
And the second person, or sometimes it's the first person, is a parent, usually their mother, or family, or close relative, or something like that. But the innermost circle, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I realized, like, I still had faith in myself. I had that belief to where, like I said, it's like, just get up, man. You can still get up. And then I did have good support from my family, as far as in my mother and my brother. They were always in my corner no matter what.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Well, you can find out more about Jake at lifelikejake.com. So I recommend any of the listeners check that out. So I'm kind of curious, just so that you going to New York and choosing this degree, and it like international trade and marketing for fashion industry. Is that the degree? I'm curious why
exactly.
that
one. When I was living in Mexico at the time when I was applying to school, because I'd gone there after I gotten laid off from the oil field to basically refine myself. I was scared again. I'd lost my job, income. I had a girlfriend at the time. We broke up because I was afraid. How am I going to support us? I took a coward's way out and went on a sabbatical. But during that sabbatical, I was working with my uncle, my godfather, who has been designing and manufacturing furniture for the last like 30 years in Mexico, in a rural little mountain town in the state of Michoacan. And I went down there with him and was there for a while. And while there, I'm helping him out around the factory, doing some of these things like international trade, commerce, and compliance, and a little bit of design and manufacturing. And when I looked up the degrees at FIT, I didn't necessarily want to go to fashion school for design or mass communication or merchandising or whatnot. So I started just looking through the degree plans and then saw international trade and marketing for the fashion industries in their business school.
Yeah.
And the curriculum for it was basically what I was doing at the factory. So I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but that looks like the one. So I, stuck a pin on that.
That's cool. Yeah. And how long were you in New York for that?
I moved to New York in 2015.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to Miami in 2020. Or I moved to Miami in 2020. So from 2015 till then, I had some stints in Mexico where I'd go back and work for a while, come back to New York, go back and work, live for a while between Michoacan and Mexico City, and then back and forth a little bit. Yeah. And then came back for good to the States in 2020. And I've been back and forth from New York and Miami since then.
Gotcha. So, but then, all right, so it's kind of fascinating because you got these degrees, you got an MBA now, but there's I'm guessing you probably still use it. I don't know if this is, but right now you've changed where you're like, how do I take the breakthrough that I've had in my life personally, in my physical and spiritual life? How do I help others do that? And what led to that journey of like, hey, I got to start giving this back. I got to start serving that person I used to be.
It's a good question. First, the going to business school was great. I love my fellow Trojans out there. Fight on to all of you. And I still put it all to use. Whether it was in real estate in New York City when I was still in business school, learning, about various acumen of competitive and comparative advantages, and being able to understand how to utilize skill sets that I had to be able to set myself apart from peers and certainly from other workers, within the industry, to say, like, example, I got on the city bike. I was a big city bike rider in New York. I knew because of my physicality and my physical endurance and health, I could serve and satisfy more customers in a shorter and the same amount of time as you or an X person because you were a pedestrian or you were based on the subway where I could get around on the bike a lot faster. I became more efficient. I became more proficient. Thus, I increased my capacity to be able to provide service. So like all the things were literally like terms from business school. And as I was in business school, I was like, okay, inimitable service. How can we do that today? Okay, how can we comparative advantage? How can we do that today? Competitive advantage. How can we do that today? And I had spreadsheets set up to be able to like correlate my performances with work and productivity to show like, okay, it's essentially kind of like in sports with statistics of probability, right? Like you're a right-handed batter. I'm a left-handed pitcher. You like them this way, da, 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 da. Odds are I should throw you this pitch for 1, 2, and 3. And then as we get further into the count, you're likely to get slower and drop this shoulder. So I should change the location of the pitch. I had it down to my best day or highest probability day in neighborhood in New York to find this type of a client. And I had the client profiled as well. And I had the likelihood of it occurring as well as the amount of money they were likely to spend. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the little feathers in the cap from business school, you know, but it was like literally using what I was learning in academics and applying it in the real world. It was pretty radical.
That is.
But as far as in doing what I do now, I've been doing it for a long time. I was just resisting it for a long time. You know, even when I was at FIT and thinking that I needed to go work for Ralph Lauren as a compliance officer, because to me that was go to FIT, get corporate job at, you know, the mecca of corporate jobs in fashion, especially. And I love the brand. So it just wasn't for me what I was doing. I was, you know, serving audits and very binarily working within a cubicle sense. And that's not the best use of my skill set. I'm a personable person. You know, my passion comes from interaction and getting in touch with people.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into real estate because that was okay, now I'm a little bit more with service. I'm more with people, et cetera, et cetera. But even before that and while at FIT, I still had people asking me about health things. I've always had people asking me about health things, health related things, physical, nutrition, you know, weight loss and gain, mindset, you know, especially people that knew I was in the Marine Corps, like, man, how do you do this? What's the discipline around that? And so like kind of the pillars of my philosophy now were being asked of me by other people. I just didn't realize there was something there.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I knew it wasn't a person I wanted to be at the time. Right. And then it just kept happening. And it kept happening more and more and more and more to where the real eureka moment was about a year ago. I was in a sales meeting with about 100 other brokers. And everybody was complaining. And I fucking hate that. Number one, you know?
Yeah.
God, I hate that. And we can't get clients. I can't get a buyer. I can't get any leads. I can't. And I was just like smoldering because, you know, even then I knew like, y'all are just, this is the wrong lens to see this through. Like, it's not them. Hello. Like, why do you think you're going to be any different than every other freaking broker out there that is providing the same templates, the same market data, the same, hey, did you see my monthly newsletter? If I'm like, no one cares, dude. Like, you're doing nothing different than the 50,000 other mofos like that.
Yeah.
What makes you different, right? And in that meeting, everybody's talking about leads and all this stuff. And I had like 20 messages from people asking for help. You know, hey, I've got terrible anxiety. I'm depressed. I'm suicidal. I'm overweight. I'm underweight. I'm weak. I'm this or that. I've got, you know, an autoimmune disease. And I was like, what the fuck, man? Like, and it just hit me. Like, dude, you're knocking on the wrong door. You don't need to be knocking on a door. You have the door.
Yeah.
All you have to do is open it. Like, people are trying to barge your door down. And you're being so selfish and scared because you know who you'll have to become to open that door and to serve those people's needs. And that's when I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
Like I looked down this almost like a gauntlet
Yeah.
and saw who it was, who I was, and who I needed to be in order to be that. And I was like, oh God,
Mm,
don't tell me I got to become that, like
yeah.
Jesus Christ, kind of like the vision of
Mhm.
myself. Like I have to become. You can't just appear to be.
Mhm.
You have to be living, breathing testament of your work.
Yeah.
You can't just be talking about it and acting like an ass on the side. You
Yeah.
have to be this person.
Mm.
But by being that person, that's what's going to give you the wholesomeness you've been missing, Jake. That's what's going to liberate you from these feelings of inadequacy and fear of society and that lost identity that you've been looking for, what you thought was being a Marine. But it's like, no, dude, it's always been about you and just believing in yourself and becoming who you were always born to be and trying not to now be all these other things you thought you needed. And that all happened in the split second in this, 100-person broker
Mm.
meeting where I was like, oh, cool. And like,
Yeah.
I literally got up and walked out in the middle of it.
That's
And
awesome.
I haven't looked back.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was cool.
What were the faces like when you got up and left?
I was, I mean, some people were just like, where are you going? I was like, I'll be right back.
I'm out. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I still have
So
my licenses though. Don't get me wrong. Like I just
yeah,
don't, it's not where I'm putting my energy.
right. That's good. So I'm curious. You said you saw this road, this path of who you had to become. In that, did you find a process that you take your clients through?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the process I take them through is literally my process,
Hmm.
right? That's the beauty of the work is that number one, there is nothing that I ask of any of my clients that I either do not still practice to this day myself or that I haven't done before, right? Because that creates congruence amongst us. It's the empathy between us. There's a complete understanding and system of trust that's based around that. Like, how could I ask you, Cartwright, to do something that I've not done myself? How could I ask of you something that I'm not asking of myself? I don't want to have that feeling and be devoid of that. Being able to impress and to teach, I think, is based around empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Because how else, if I'm going to be tough on you, like, I got to know what that pain feels like myself. Otherwise, you might get crushed,
Mm-hmm.
might break. But yeah, it's a
Yes.
simple yet highly effective process that don't get me wrong, it took me a long time to put it together because it was
Yeah.
a trial and error, right?
100%.
But now to have it in a pill form,
Mm-hmm.
it took a lot of R&D, that's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm. Just for, I mean, I guess for the potential listener out there that really wants to know more about what you do, what would be the step one, or what would be
Ooh,
something you can
perfect.
encourage them to start?
Perfect question. The single most, and this is a quote that'll hopefully I'll be cited for my life. If there's a line from Jake Thomas, this is it.
Mhm.
The single most effective thing we can do as humans in regards to our health is controlling what we put into our mouths. That
Ah,
is step one, my man.
yeah.
Straight up. The rest of it, don't even worry about it.
Uh,
Without that, the rest of it is superficial and supplemental.
yeah. So on that, because I think there's a lot of diets out there.
Oh yeah.
What would Jake describe? I'm trying to sit there and think because I'm like, man, that's a great way to look at it because we need to really process. There's so much processed food out there. There's so much crap we put in our bodies. But for somebody who just is clueless about nutrition, what would be one way to look at it or think about it?
Well, I'll say this first. I competed in physique, in natural bodybuilding, and I was a 5-time champion, even in the world championships.
Mm.
And I've tested on myself, back to that empathy thing,
Mm-hmm.
as many diets as I could possibly find, whether they were fad or dogmatic. And I did them for a minimum of 1 year. Right. So when someone tells you, like, yeah, I tried that diet, I'm like, How long did you do it for? Oh, 21 days. Shut the fuck up. No. Like everything for me, every diet, vegetarian over a year, vegan over a year, standard American, obviously a lifetime, bro diet over a year, if it fits your macros over a year, paleo, whole 30, as many Mediterranean, as many of them as I could do for over a year. Because I was also coaching people in nutrition and I wanted to have that same empathy to be able to relate to them and say, okay, no, like you can use this instead. And like, hey, I understand how you feel that nutrient deficiency is rough and sourcing the items this way, it can be very difficult. So like even to the point when I was competing in that world championship run, I was a vegan bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
was
wow.
totally against the grain. Yeah, man. And,
Yeah.
and I did that just because people said you couldn't do it. So I was like, okay, well, watch, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it worked out pretty well. However, if you were to find a single source of sustenance to give the body everything it needs with minimal discard, maximum efficiency and utilization, and the least amount of duress possible, how do you find that in the natural world? There's two places it occurs. One is when we're infants and it's called breast milk.
Yeah.
The other is called red meat.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Full stop. End of story. No fucking debate. Like, again, I'm speaking from the place of having been on all these other treks and journeys and not just as like an avid eater, but like as a performer, as an athlete, as a professional athlete, having to use these nutrients and understand their uses and applicabilities, all the while during those athletic feats, living in foreign countries, traveling back and forth in the United States, working full-time in real estate, going to school full-time. And by full-time, I mean 21 to 24 hours a semester and still maintaining a 4.0 GPA and graduating salutatorian 2 out of 2,000 people and doing the same thing at USC and graduating with honors from that class. So like, I wasn't just sitting on the sofa and doing nothing. Like I was maximizing these diets.
Yeah.
And still, there is nothing else like what I practice now, which is currently the lion version of the diet. But if there's 3 rings about it, the most outer ring would be what's called animal based, right? To where if you had the denominator in this fraction, the majority of your calories are going to come from animal based products. So cuts of meat, fish, poultry, seafood, etc., dairy. And so long as the majority of your calories come from animal based. Now the numerator, the rest of those calories, I would say utilize whole foods at your leisure to what your body's kind of calling you to. None of those would be processed. So if someone says, what about bread that comes from, it's not a whole food. What about pasta? Well, it's not a whole food. Not to mention the American version of gluten. If gluten in the natural world, rather wheat in the natural world looks like this, the American version is this.
Yeah.
Meaning they're that different. Why is that? Well, this one is as the creator made it. Natural. This one has been genetically modified, chemically engineered, et cetera, to have a withstanding temperature, XYZ, transportation, shelf life, compatibility with other things. So when this is made into bread and consumed, the body's like, oh, this isn't that foreign. We get it. But when this is made into bread and consumed, the body's like, what the hell is going on here?
So it stores it as fat, pretty much.
Stores it as fat. It certainly doesn't know what it is. And that's back to that whole single source of sustenance with, what was that last part? Least amount of duress on the body. Back to the breast milk thing. That's why that exists. Because it gives our little babies everything they need from that single source with no duress. Because if we stressed their bodies, it could freaking kill them.
Right.
So as humans, or rather as adults, we're constantly being inundated with variables. The system is. The body is able to withstand amazing things and to do amazing things. But if it's continually bombarded with variables and toxic variables and just not good things for it, it can't work. It can't do the work it was born and made to do. Meaning, the diet isn't what heals us. It's the fact that everything else is eliminated that the body heals itself. There just is not another diet that can do this because of the singularity of the sustenance. So for me, what I say is the best diet in the world would be the carnivore diet, hands down, bar none. So you've got animal-based, carnivore, lion.
Ah, man, that's awesome. I love red meat, so I appreciate you saying
Yeah,
that.
man. Easy. I mean, look, you do because you're born to. You
Hmm.
know, like from here down, every single human being in the world loves red meat from here down,
Hmm.
meaning these, and this is what messes that up. A
Right.
little bit of this too, emotionally.
Hmm.
But every human body loves red meat. It is innately put into us to like that food. We have 2.8 million years as human beings on the planet. If you were to put the time of our consumption of food on a clock, a 24-hour clock, the
Hmm.
current modern way of eating, particularly the ingredients, represents about 30 seconds of a 24-hour clock. 30 seconds.
Hmm.
The other 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds represent how we've eaten throughout our entirety of life, of generations, right? Of 2 point some odd million years.
Mm.
So to think that all of a sudden, modern science and agriculture, horticulture, et cetera, know what's best for us is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to think that it's going to come from a plant or it's going to come from this or something, baby formula made from almond, Christ. Nah, man.
Mm-mm.
But our
Yeah.
pride, our egos, our minds, our pleasure centers of likability and sensational
Hmm.
experiential sensationalism. That's the problem because
Yeah.
pretty much every person we know, I know, lives to eat. They don't eat to live.
Yeah. Oh man, and that's just a last what 50 to 100 years thing.
Exactly.
That's
Right. So,
it.
like within the last 100 years, 90% of the foods on the shelves in supermarket didn't exist 100 years ago, rather. 90% of
Yes.
the foods you find in the supermarket did not exist 100 years ago. I'll follow that up by saying 90% of the diseases that currently exist did not exist 100 years ago.
How about that?
How about them apples?
That's interesting. Uh well, Jake, I kind of want to go to that kind of next level to physical activity. Because I know there's probably been a handful of times in my life where I've realized, like, man, I am much more capable than I think I am.
Yeah.
So, how could you encourage that person out there that's pretty stagnant, that's afraid that they're going to hurt themselves or whatever, to engage in some level of physical activity that's beyond what they think they're capable of?
Oh, gosh. It's easy to say, but it's crawl, walk, run, right?
Hmm.
And that's hard because it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard to stomach. It's hard to swallow. You look at it and you think like, oh God. And I say that coming from having gone through rehab, physical rehab, not just druggy rehab. Done that a few times too.
Yep.
But physical rehab, I had some injuries when I was in the Marine Corps, called anterior bilateral compartment syndrome. So anterior, front, bilateral, both legs. Compartment syndrome, and compartment syndrome is when there is blood flowing through the fascia, the tissue
Mhm.
surrounding the musculature in your legs. And I'll use my arm as my leg. So here's my ankle and here's my knee. There were times when, from what I was told, the impact and weight bearing,
Mhm.
coupled with the constriction of how tight I had my boots, and at times we weren't allowed to take them off, improper stretching. I didn't know anything about foam rolling at the time, or myofascial release, da 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 da. You do this over time, things can happen. The fascia tissue can basically hernia, bruise.
Yeah.
And so I was having all these problems internally. I didn't realize it. And it started at the first year of my enlistment, 2003. And I dealt with it year after year after year after year
Yeah.
until I was discharged in 2007, finally had surgeries in 2008 and 2009. But following the surgeries, I literally had to learn to walk again. I had one leg done in 2008 and the other leg done in 2009. And I was like, can we just do them both at the same time? Like, why do I have to wait a year? And they're like, well, how are you going to move around if you don't have any legs? I was like, I'm pretty sure I'll figure it out. Like, Lieutenant Dan does it just fine. And like other people, like quadriplegic, paraplegics, whatever. I was like, I'll be inspired as all hell to have that challenge. I know I'm going to walk again. It'll be
Mhm.
inconvenient, but I was willing to do that. And they said,
Mhm.
no, well, one leg at a time. That said, I'm not speaking from a place of ignorance. to where I don't know what it's like to not be able to walk. Or I don't know what it's like to have to look uphill and say, fuck, like I used to be such a stud in the gym, or like I used to be able to run like the wind. And I had to check that ego the same way I'm telling you to. I had to start from the crawl phase the same way that I'm telling you to. I had to exercise my mind and work that muscle when I couldn't use and move my legs the same way I'm telling you to. It's not about having to, man, I got to run another marathon or I got to swim another mile. First of all, the greatest weapon and the greatest muscle is always going to be the mind. I know plenty of athletes, I'm sure you do too, that are freaking dipshits.
Yeah.
Because their minds are shut. You know what I mean? Like they're not happy inside. And I learned that in competitive bodybuilding. Like these people that are on the covers of magazines and representing nutrition companies, that they're miserable, or they're drug addicts, or they're alcoholics, or they're just terrible people internally. But this, you can do anything with. Take my legs, take my arms, take my sight, take whatever. As long as this is thinking, anything can be conjured. And so if you can have the humility, the patience, the patience, the patience, the patience, and then the dedication and the consistency, you can do anything. You know, to see people that have climbed mountains that shouldn't have ever taken another step. I was on a run the other day with a friend of mine, a veterinarian in New Orleans. He literally had a heart attack at the beginning of an Ironman. This is last year in Texas in April. Within the first quarter mile of the swim, he had a heart attack to where half of his heart, after they realized everything on the graphs, had shut down. Not only did he finish the Ironman, he finished it under time. He made the time, which is just a remarkable story. He and I had an interview the other day. I'll be posting it hopefully within a week or two on my YouTube channel with us discussing it. It's like 2.5 hours long. But his doctors attributed it to his surviving to his being a great climber. Because as he had climbed so much and trained at high altitude and put himself through a lot of things, strenuous things with limited oxygen, his heart has actually developed new arteries and manufactured new lines of blood flow. Yeah, man. And this isn't abnormal. This is a normal thing that a lot of climbers get. Anyone that works at high altitude or has to perform at high altitude, it's not an uncommon thing. And basically what happened was when that half of his, literally it was like left ventricle, right ventricle, or left and right atrium or left and right ventricle, I forget, but gone, his other new vessels basically just took over and they're like, oh, we got this, no problem. Now, could he have gone on for forever? Probably not. Right. But it's kind of like a run flat tire. It'll at least get him to the gas station, right? So he finished the race. He was having pain the whole way. It was horrible, But then, he gets to the hospital and they're like, yeah, we need to operate on you right freaking now because you should be dead and blah, blah, blah. But crawl, walk, run. And that was in April of last year. He and I went for a run a couple of weeks ago when I was in New Orleans together. He was never supposed to walk again, never supposed to run again, never supposed to train again. And we were doing it. So like, I'm saying this because it's possible. You literally have to believe it. You can't be told you can't. Because if you listen to that self-talk and you don't have positive self-talk, you're going to just loathe. And I've been there too. And that doesn't serve you and it doesn't serve anyone else around you.
Man, that's self-talk. That's a great one right there just in itself. So, that's kind of on the last question I want to ask. What if you could talk to your 25-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Just shut up, man. Just shut up and listen. Listen more. Yeah. Let them tell you. Listen to them. Be fascinated by them. Stop criticizing them. Stop judging them. Be mystified by them. Laugh at them in a good way. Yeah. Smile at them. I was angry. Like I said, 25 years old. I had 2 years out of the Marine Corps. I was angry. I was mad. I was scared, confused. And so everything about the world to me, I was, judging and, just stern about. Life is so much better when you see it as the theater that it is. Yeah. You see people for the characters that they are. When you appreciate that, right? What would, like in Hook, a movie about Peter Pan.
Oh, yeah.
Dustin Hoffman plays Captain Hook and says the awesome line, what would the world be like without Captain Hook? It's true. You got to have that contrast, and people are like that. And it takes a great friend told me one time, it takes all the people to make a world. And that's the truth. So I would tell myself, dude, just shut up, listen, and enjoy the show.
Man, that's great. Jake, I appreciate you coming on, man. Where's the best place for people to find you?
Thanks for having me, Cartwright. First off, it's good to be here. And you can find me at lifelikejake.com, but for more personal and animated things on Instagram for sure. Same thing at lifelikejake.
Awesome. Well, Jake, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was a blast getting to talk to you and hear more of your story.
Thanks, brother. Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Men Are Forged podcast. If you enjoyed this interview, I recommend going over to Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribing. There's more great content, short clips, videos, even some full interviews of just more content about how we are shaping men into leaders. So you can go there to the Men Are Forged YouTube page and subscribe. Don't go just yet. A funny little clip for you that happened at the beginning of this interview that is 20 seconds. It's something if you want to check out to show a little bit of the poor prep work I did. Sometimes you forget the simplest of things. Anyway, here's the clip. Jake, I forgot your last name. That's a terrible thing to do. Jake Thomas, right? It should be easy. Oh my God. I'm sitting there looking at your bio. Jake Thomas, there's your email. Yeah. That's pretty simple. And it's 3 syllables.
Well, and we're rolling.
Yeah. Man, help me.